Good afternoon and welcome to the latest in our series of live career webinars brought to you by the HOP platform. So HOP stands for Hertfordshire Opportunities Portal. It's a website and has many social media handles which you can see on your screen at the moment that we hope all young people in Hertfordshire who go to school in Hertfordshire, who live in and around Hertfordshire, will be able to access, because it's a host of loads of career resources and information that we hope will help inspire you and make your next really important decisions about what you're going to do. Now, the purpose of these webinars is to let you know a little bit more about what it's like to work for a particular employer and business. And today we've gone with the largest employer in the whole of the UK, I think the 6th largest employer in the whole of the world, and one that you will undoubtedly all have had experience of at some time in your life. So we're going to look today about careers in the NHS, and there are a whole host of opportunities in Hertfordshire alone, and we're going to explore those a little bit further with our panelists. So just to let you know about how this webinar will work, I'm the presenter. I'm going to introduce our panelists in a moment. They'll introduce themselves. Then we've got some set questions that we'll run through and just some main discussion points. And lots of these will be taken from some of the questions you've already put in when you registered to come onto this webinar. But then we want to leave you the opportunity to ask any questions that you might want to know a little bit more about. So anything that hasn't been covered earlier or anything that you want a little bit more information about, you can do that. We can't see or hear any of you. But if you're watching this live, so you can submit your questions, and the way you do that is on the questions tab on your dashboard. That opens out a little text box. In there you can type your question. It will only be visible to me, and then I can direct it through to the panelists that you want to hear a little bit more from. So this webinar is being recorded. If you can't stay through to the end of it, then you will be able to watch it back. It's on our YouTube channel. I'll share that with you at the end of the session. You can also share this information with your family and friends as well. So if you know someone who you think would be interested to watch this, then do share it with them. But without any further ado, I'm going to introduce you through to our panelists. So if I ask them to introduce themselves, say their name and their job title, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail. So firstly, good afternoon to Namdi.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Gareth. So my name is Namdi, and my role is as Associate Director of People Capability at the East and North Hertfordshire NHS Trust. So I guess maybe just a little bit about what that means. It means I kind of lead on all aspects of our staff training and development, covering areas such as clinical staff, including our nurses, midwives, and lots of other staff groups. So really supporting our staff through their development in the organisation, whether it's through education, whether it's through courses, or whether it's through progressing their careers while working in the NHS.
Sure, thank you, Namdi. So Namdi's a man who knows a lot about the types of roles that are needed within the trust, and he can tell you the sorts of skills and qualities that they'd be looking for that some of you might possess. Good afternoon, Ruth.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Ruth Sanderson, and I'm one of the senior nurses here at the East and North Herts Trust. I'm actually based in the clinical education team, and I oversee the apprenticeships and work experience for the organisation. I've worked in the trust since 1997, where I was emergency department sister for 22 years before I moved into the current education role I'm in now.
Okay, thank you very much, Ruth. And now, just to prove that the NHS isn't just about doctors and nurses, I'd like to invite Nikki Lane to tell us a little bit more about you and your background, Nikki.
Hello, I'm Nikki Lane. I'm Facilities General Services Manager on the operational side of soft services for facilities management. So part of my role is leading the operational teams, and that includes portering, switchboard, linen and uniform, laundry, non-clinical transport, cleaning, catering. It's very, very varied, and that's what I love about this role. I've worked at East and North Herts since 2004. I joined as an administrator, and I've worked my way up within our department, and that is also down to the education team that we have at East and North Herts. They've supported me in my development. They've supported me with apprenticeships and courses, and it's such a lovely place to work.
Sure, okay, that's a really good opening statement, Nikki. And then good afternoon, Katerina.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Katerina Ginn, and I'm interim transformation program manager for estates and facilities. What that means is basically I'm leading on strategic project for our division, focusing on looking at the future and what opportunities are there for our staff, for the building, etc. I've been with the organization since 2004, so 18 years, and like Nikki, my journey with Eastern North Trust has been really good. I started as a switchboard operator, and I worked my way up. I'm about to complete a master and apprenticeship in business and organizational strategy that's been funded and supported by the trust, and I've had the ample opportunity for learning, and I enjoy the job. That's why I've been here for such a long time, so thank you.
Sure. Okay. We'll look forward to unpacking a lot more about all of your job roles and what you enjoy about them in a moment. But Namdi, let's just set a little bit of context here. So neither Nikki or Katerina work in medical or clinical roles. Ruth obviously does, as a trained nurse. But what percentage of people who work for the NHS have actually gone through sort of medicine school or are clinically trained and qualified? Because I think the perception is that the only people who work for the NHS would be doctors and nurses, but that's obviously not the case.
Definitely not. No, it's a great question, Gareth, as well, because I think there is that perception that most of the roles in the NHS are either nurses or doctors, or you're working in with patients. But actually, while a great proportion of our staff are medically trained, also a large proportion work in sort of what we call non-clinical areas, and we're probably split for about 75-30% in terms of staff working in the sort of background and supporting our clinical teams develop each day. So you can imagine we have about 350 careers in the NHS. Most of them are clinical roles, yes, but also a large proportion of roles working to support our clinical staff. So roles range from IT, facilities, estates, our porters. Also, we have a lot, I work in human resource management, so managing the people team, right, education and development. We also have people who work in resourcing to support recruitment. We also have a really sort of large proportion of staff who actually help in doing things like clinical coding, so coding patient data. Staff who work in business management, project management. So really large array of roles in the NHS. And I think one of the things I always say about working in the NHS is that you have the opportunity to really choose your own career. So you come into the NHS. A lot of people have changed careers while being in the NHS. Started off with either being nurses and gone into other things like management or taking on even more senior positions. So I guess as I say, the world is your oyster when you work in the health service, because the range of opportunities are vast and varied.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so look, just want to share this graphic with you again, just to set some context. I think Ruth, you seem quite well versed in this. I'm conscious that we'll have students watching from all four corners of Hertfordshire. If you don't know your geography, East and North Herts partnership that the four of you all work for would cover, typically Stevenage Hospital, Lister Hospital, and the east of the county. But just thinking, for anyone who's watching this who maybe lives over in Watford or Hemel Hempstead or St Albans, how does it work? What do we mean by these different trust titles that all exist within Hertfordshire and within that NHS family?
Okay, so looking at the screen that you're showing us at the moment, so East and North Herts and West Herts are the two biggest hospitals that cover the Hertfordshire locality. So depending on where you live, so if you're Stevenage and the surrounding areas, going out towards Welling, maybe down as far as St Albans, then you potentially the hospital where you would come to have inpatient treatment would be with us. But when you're getting further towards Watford, Hemel, that part of Hertfordshire, then obviously you would go to West Herts. Obviously, you've also got on the border, we've got the Luton and Dunstable Hospital as well, which just sort of tips into that Bedfordshire border. So we do have a lot of areas where, depending on where you live, you might have the opportunity to go to two big acute hospitals, rather than, you know, I live in Stevenage, I would naturally come here if I needed treatment. I wouldn't look to go to West Herts unless it was a specific speciality that we don't offer here. And obviously every trust has specialities that are quite unique to them. So for example, here at the Lister, we have a very big robotic urology department where they do the robotic surgery, where patients come in to have kidneys removed, various urology surgeries that are all done by a robot, obviously under the guidance of very senior urology consultants, but that's very unique to us. Whereas if you had a head injury and you needed neurosurgery, we wouldn't be able to operate on you here, and we would have to send you out to one of our sister hospitals, which would be necessarily potentially going to London or to Edinburgh. So every hospital is different. Then you've got the Hertfordshire Partnership Foundation University Hospital, which is actually our mental health trust, which covers the whole of Hertfordshire. So it wouldn't matter where you lived in the locality area, that would be the trust that would look after you if you needed help with your mental health, or if you'd needed admitting for a mental health crisis. And then Hertfordshire Community Trust is kind of what it says on the tin. This is everything to do with a community service that you are going to receive in your own home. And again, that is across the whole of Hertfordshire. So that again won't be dependent on where you live.
Thank you. That's a really good explanation, Ruth. Certainly I understand it now. 20 minutes ago, I had no comprehension of that at all. What I do know, so those QR codes that are on your screen at the moment, they will take you directly to each of those trusts' websites, and each of them do actually have their own jobs microsite within there, so they all have their own vacancies. So if you wanted to have a look at that for a bit of research, then that might be a good thing to do. I'm going to put this slide up again before we finish the webinar as well. So if you've not done so already, there will be the opportunity to access a little bit more information about those. We'll also talk about the Step Into the NHS website, which is a really, really good one for you all to be aware of if you're not already. Okay, well, look, let's find out a little bit more about what you what it's like working for the NHS. So, Nikki, I'm keen to ask you this question because, as we stated, you don't do a clinical role, you're not clinically qualified, but you and all of the team and the job roles that you just described there are absolutely integral to the care and well-being of patients. So just talk us through a little bit more in a bit more detail about the variety of different jobs that you have within sort of facilities and estates.
So we always like to describe our services as the clog that supports the other clogs of turning. So our support structure supports the clinical staff. So without the portering department, you wouldn't be able to move patients around the hospitals. You wouldn't be able to get urgent blood samples to the pathology lab. And also, it's also other things like movement of furniture, tables, etc., and also helping people when they come into the hospital. They might need support with getting to their destination, so that may be like a wheelchair user. We would help them get to their destination. Also, if we take like the non-clinical transport, so that team delivers pharmacy and medication to patients in their homes. That's a new service that we've currently recently joined forces with the pharmacy team, and that's really supporting our patients, which means that they can go to their outpatient appointments. Some of them are now online, and it also then means that they don't have to come into the hospital, so we can deliver their pharmacy for them. It also, we are transferring equipment between sites, we are moving medical records around, we're collecting posts from local GPs, all the local small sort of clinics around Hertfordshire, and even out to London as well, and that all comes back to Lister and gets distributed to the correct departments. If you take linen, which is a massive service, obviously all patients need linen on their beds. That also includes pyjamas, nightwear, gowns for theatres, blankets, and we provide with that, and we do over 2,000 pieces of linen per month. We have a catering department, so obviously we need to feed our patients and we feed our staff as well. And that ranges from a variety of jobs. So you can start off as a catering assistant, you can work your way up to chef. You then can go into the management side of things and the compliance, because obviously it's regulated and there's a lot of standards that we have to adhere to. We also have switchboard, so we have a team of operators, and it's not just answering the telephone calls, it's also putting out the emergency calls that come through. So people may have cardiac arrest, so we need to make sure we bleep the correct teams to go and support those patients who need that urgent help. We can put out major hemorrhage calls, so making sure again that we're getting people to the right location. We also provide the main reception service, and that's also supported by the switchboard operators, and that's really important for the wayfinding piece for when patients come, so they're their first point of contact when they come into the hospital, making sure that they get to their destination on time and they know where to go. It also is the patient inquiry line. So again, people will call, they will want to know where their relatives are, so we can put them through to the correct departments. Cleaning is a massive part of facilities. We need to make sure that we keep the hospital clean to support the patients. They need to be in a clean environment. There's a lot of regulations behind that as well. They have to adhere to a national cleaning standard, and we check that the domestic contractor is adhering to that national cleaning standard through auditing, through various of contract review meetings. They also have within their contracts penalties if they don't adhere to those standards or if standards are slipping. And obviously we put in action plans when things sometimes don't quite go quite well, and then we put improvements in place, and it usually gets usually turns around and we see improvements, etc. But it's all about teamwork. We as a department, just as us as facilities, we've got over 200 members of staff, so as you can imagine, that's a very large group to ensure they're all doing what they're meant to be doing. But also as well, on the side of that, obviously a major part of my role to make sure yes, one, operationally it's all working, but equally all of those 200 members of staff, making sure that they're receiving training, and that's including the statutory mandatory training that we have to do, like fire and information governance, etc. But it's also personal development training. So there are obviously some groups of staff that are really wanting to develop into higher roles, and we will always support them on that journey, and that's really good to see, and we're really proud of that within our department, because there's a few people that we've put on those development roles, development pathways, and they've gone on to higher banded roles, so it's really nice to see, and it also makes them more committed to their role, and we always say that the people who are doing the day-to-day, so like say a porter, they always have the best ideas because they're the one working it every day. So we really encourage them to put their ideas forward, and it always improves the patient experience.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Nikki. It's a really, really good answer, and it explains a lot about the types of roles that you have. So, I've already had a couple of questions coming through now for those of you watching this live. So, thank you. We will definitely come on to all of your questions. So, if you submit it, it will definitely be asked. Catherine, I'm just thinking of the irony of you working in facilities, and you need to get yourself a light in there because you're very dark in your office. But Nikki just mentioned about the patient experience. So I'm just thinking from your perspective, from the facilities perspective, how important is it from the moment that a patient or a member of staff arrives on site that things like I guess the landscaping, the exterior looks nice, and the signage inside the hospital, how much work goes into making sure that that patient experience is as good as it possibly can be from your team's perspective?
The work that goes behind the scene is huge. I don't think there is the full understanding of it, because we just tend to get on with it in the background. The first impression is what matter, and we always try to make sure that that is achieved. There's a lot of work preparation. We do going back to what Nikki was saying earlier, you know, or auditing of different ways. For example, one that we'll be introducing this year is the place inspection, which is patient-led. So place stands for patient-led assessment care of the environment. So it looks, hopefully I've said it right, Nikki, and it looks at all aspect of the patient experience and is led by patient representative. And we look at the environment, we look at the cleanliness, we look at the food, we look at the estates, dementia aspect, different aspect, and from that we pick up learning, we create action plan. We also look at within our team, we have one of the service manager. They also look and provide reports on patient experience, different surveys that we have, friends and family, Meridian, actually is called IQ now, I think, but is a national survey. We also do our own survey to try and understand what the patient think about the food, about the environment, the cleanliness, etc. So that plays a huge part. And yesterday we actually celebrated the World FM Day, and we had a stall on main reception, and we had quite a lot of our patient and visitors stopping and asking questions about our services, and it was great engagement, and we received a really good feedback about our services. So yeah.
Sure. Well done. Ruth, I want to get your perspective from someone on the clinical side of things. How important it is to you that you come to work in a hospital and the environment, like the physical environment, is right?
I think it's essential. I currently work in probably one of the oldest buildings in the hospital, which doesn't actually have any patients that visit us, but this is the old school of nursing, which was built back in the day when nurses came to a hospital, were trained in the hospital, didn't go off to university, a bit like I did 30 something years ago when I did my training. But the environment is hugely important, not only for, as Katerina said, that first impression of the patient gets is the one that will stick with them throughout their whole journey. And I think, you know, if the environment is warm, it's welcoming, it's clean, you're clutter free, there's no horrible smells appearing from anywhere, you haven't had to avoid a puddle on your way in. Our estates and facilities team do a fantastic job in keeping our hospital in an absolute pristine condition. But the other really important part of that patient's journey is also the first person that they meet. So my background of being in ED, I could often be the first person that they've ever met in a hospital. My impression on them will be the start of their journey. So if they're met with a smile, you know, a kind word, pointing somebody in the right direction, because hospitals are like big schools, they're just made of corridors that you eventually get used to, and it's like, you know, it's like the back of your hand. But when it's new to you, you've never been in this environment before, actually getting lost is very easy to do. But it's having that person that's going to greet you, it's going to check that you're all right, because you might be in pain, you might be very anxious, it might be a loved one that you can't find, you know. So it could be that first communication you have is with switchboard, or it could be that it's that first communication is you have is face-to-face with a nurse in ED, or you go to pre-assessment for an operation. So I think it's the whole package. It's not just about the environment, but it's about the welcome that you get along the way that is absolutely key to ensuring that the patient knows what to expect, and that we put on a really good high quality standard care right from the word go.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. I suppose my question, I'm going to ask this one to Nikki. Namdi, you're going to feature very heavily on the next section of questions that I ask. But Nikki, I just want to ask you this question. As someone, say, without a medical background, what do you enjoy most about working for the NHS? And why is it that the NHS has kept you in a job for, what you said, best part of 20 years now, where really your skill set and knowledge base, you could work in any industry? But what is it about the NHS, would you say?
It's almost like a second family. I didn't think I would be in the NHS for as long as I have been. I don't really see myself ever leaving the NHS. Definitely within my role, I feel that we give something back to our community and our patients, and it's really nice to be part of that and support our clinical staff with be able to provide that care for our patients and even our visitors. It's not just patients, we also have visitors that come into the hospital. You know, and that could just be that they're going to visit their relatives, and sometimes they need to also see that we've got a clean environment for their loved ones, making sure that things are working, so to make their, you know, their loved ones more comfortable as well. And that's really important. And I've definitely seen that on my journey. And as Katerina said, with the place assessments, it's really nice to get that feedback back to show that we are doing a really good job and with supporting not just the patients but the visitors that come into the hospital as well.
Sure. Okay, thank you. So just want to move the conversation on now about the routes into working for the NHS. So Namdi, question for you. Regardless of whether you'd be looking to employ a heart surgeon or whether you're looking to employ a porter who's going to work in Nikki's team, what are the skills and qualities, regardless of any qualifications, that the NHS needs?
Yeah, so I guess one of the things that I think from hearing everyone speak, you can understand, you know, the NHS is a caring profession, is a caring organization. You know, when patients come into the NHS, you know, they don't come to, you know, they're not visiting, you know, a hospitality, you know, sector or going to, you know, a hotel. They're coming because they're vulnerable and they're in the sort of the worst kind of position at that point, and they need kind of help and assistance. So I think critically we recruit, first thing we say, we recruit to values. So the values of sort of, you know, caring, compassion, being empathetic, understanding, like, you know, we are there to put patients first, no matter what job you're doing. And I think, you know, going to the NHS, as you said, you know, there are so many careers. You can study, you know, anything coming to the NHS because there's a role for you. But also we want to make sure that people who come to work for the NHS understand, you know, what we do in the NHS, have you know, a passion for caring. I want to make things right. So every single role that you hear about, whether you work in finance or you work in IT, one of the things we really focus on is recruiting for values. So looking at people who actually live the NHS values and understand what that is and how they can support us in that journey. So I think first and foremost, we're looking at people who actually understand the NHS, understand the professions that they want to go into, but most importantly, can you know, support our journey in providing the right patient care for our staff. So, and also, you know, that comes from building the right team. So one of the things we really do, which is really important for us, is about our culture. So culture in the NHS, as you heard, is like a family. So you need to understand how you can support each other, support your team, work across different sectors. And, you know, take example, for example, during the pandemic, we had staff who don't actually work on the front line, who don't work in our wards, who actually, you know, put themselves forward to volunteer and support our nurses, and, you know, whether it's helping with, you know, packaging food, helping with moving patients around. So I guess, you know, if I was going to sum it up in a nutshell, I'd say, you know, key things for us is looking at how we can recruit, you know, to our values, to make sure that you have the right, you know, the right mindset and the right approach. Yeah, that's the first thing. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Well, Ruth, looking at entry routes into different roles, if I just start with you and cover this very sort of briefly, because we've done webinars specifically on going to medicine school and becoming a nurse, but for the medical routes, there's presumably a very prescriptive route that people need to take from choosing, well, probably even GCSEs. Is that fair to say within the medical roles?
I think if somebody has aspirations to become a doctor, then there is only one route into that, and that is still via university. So you would need to do GCSEs to a reasonably high level. You're probably looking at A's and B's or 7, 8s and 9s now in the new scoring. Choosing wisely at A level, and again, you know, the medical schools are looking you know, for the high marks in A levels, and because, you know, it's an incredibly challenging academic role to undertake to become a doctor. You know, you're working 5 years, or you're at university for 5 years at med school. If you want to be a dentist, that'll be 7 years. So there's a huge commitment, but it is about choosing the right GCSEs so that you're on that right pathway to make sure that you get to university with the A levels that you require. Obviously, for nursing, that's slightly different now. Do you want me to explain quickly about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, so I know there's some really exciting apprenticeship opportunities that have opened up now within nursing. So that would be good just to touch on that.
Yeah, so there's basically two routes now into nursing. So there's the traditional route, which means that you would do your A levels, you would choose a university that has a nursing degree course attached to it. So, for example, all our student nurses that are currently on placement in the trust are based at the University of Hertfordshire. So that's our sort of local foundation trust that we're affiliated to. But the other alternative, which is where my role comes into play the most, is becoming a nurse through the apprenticeship route. So starting as a clinical support worker, undertaking a clinical health apprenticeship, which is fully funded by the organisation. And then you go on to do, so there's two pathways, the student nursing associate apprenticeship, and then the top-up registered nurse degree apprenticeship, or there is the 4-year degree apprenticeship. Either route will give you the same qualification as if you had been to university. So there's no difference in the qualification. It takes you slightly longer in time to do the apprenticeship route, but the advantages are you're earning while you're learning, all your academic fees are paid for, and it's something that we're promoting hugely across this trust and across all the sister hospitals that are in our area. So, you know, don't think that if I haven't got the ability to do A levels, that your opportunity to be a nurse is gone, because that's far from the truth now.
Sure. Okay. No, thank you. That's a really good, concise answer. And so just to let you all know that watching this one, if you want to find out more specifically about becoming a nurse or becoming a doctor or a dentist or a physiotherapist, we've covered all 4 of those specifically on one of our previous webinars. So I will share the link with you so you can go and find those as well. So Nikki, from your perspective, for someone to come in work in your team, are there any particular subjects that you'd want them to have studied at school, or do they need to have gone to university, or are you really just looking at the person?
Yeah, it depends what role they go into. So it depends. So obviously we have very low a lower grade of people, and then we have really high grades of people as well, depending on what the role involves with. So as a porter, they could start off on a sort of a low grade. So, but we would just ask for like good GCSEs, like English, maths, etc. And then what we would do, we would look at their development, and we put a lot of people on apprenticeships. We've also done customer care apprenticeships as well. That has led them into different roles around the trust as well. And a lot of them have also done supervision courses, health and safety courses, and from that I've also gone into management courses as well. So it depends on the individual as well. That's mainly sort of around like portering, sort of the linen teams, etc. If we take catering, for example, we have varied roles within that department. So we have catering assistants, we have catering porters, and we have chefs, and then we go into the compliance and the catering manager roles. So again, it's a good level of education to start with, and then depending on what the individual wants to do, we will obviously, again, we'll go down the apprenticeship line. Chefs have to have a qualification to be able to chef. And we have worked with the local colleges to make sure that people get that chefing qualification, and then they've gone on to compliance roles. So again, there's compliance roles, apprenticeships out there. Again, customer services is also part of that, health and safety, because obviously it's a regulated department. So that's also very varied. And then if I like take myself as a management role, obviously a good degree of level of education, and I've done health and safety courses, supervision courses, management courses, and I'm doing a degree level operational management course at the moment.
Okay, so lots of development opportunities as well for you. Namdi, just from a very, very general perspective here, how does the NHS recruit people? Do people send CVs into the local hospital, or tell us about the process, and tell us as well, particularly if somebody who might be watching this as a school leaver, what's going to make them stand out to you?
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, so I mean, generally the recruitment process across the NHS is normally quite standard. So we use what's called the NHS Jobs Application System. So it's normally via an application form. Sometimes we do accept CVs as well on the platform. And normally, you know, we want people to say, you know, kind of describe why they want to work for the NHS. So it's a section where you can put a bit of description, describe why you want the job you're looking for. And bear in mind, you know, the NHS, as I said, is a big organisation. I mean, we employ 6,000 staff, and at any point in time, we may have up to about, you know, sometimes 150, 200 vacancies in the trust. So we do quite sometimes a high volume sort of recruitment process. So it's good to, you know, show some interest in the organisation, because I know sometimes, you know, when you're at school or you're a school leaver, you're applying for jobs, sort of recommended to apply for 2 or 3 jobs, you know, or more. But it's always good to in your application or your CV, always sort of mention something about the trusts you're applying for. And also, you know, if you have the time, do a bit of research. So it could be just one point about what you like about, you know, the trust you're applying for. So it could be actually you've seen that they've got really good values, or you've seen that they've got a really good career progression, which interests you, and that's why you want to apply. So, you know, there's got to be something that kind of, you know, tweaks the interest of the interviewer or the recruiter. And, you know, once you've applied for that, we go for a shortlisting process. So if you get shortlisted to the next stage, you normally have a face-to-face or an online interview. Sometimes you may have to be asked to do maybe a short exercise, like, you know, if you're applying for like a business admin role, you might be given tasks, maybe, you know, to type a letter or deal with a phone call. And you may do a kind of a scenario-based test, but generally most times it's an interview either done virtually, online, or face-to-face. So I think, you know, key things are try and you know, make yourself stand out as much as possible by showing some interest in the organization, say why you want the job. And, you know, if you've done any sort of work experience, if you're a school leaver, you know, do mention that. If you take on any roles while you're being in school, then do mention that, because that kind of helps to make you stand out. And, you know, when you come to the interview, or you get to the interview stage, most of the interviews are generally using an approach where, you know, I think it's called the STAR approach. So it's situation, task, action, and result. So they ask, you know, to either describe the situation that you've been in, you know, so tell me about a time when you either did something or this occurred, you know, what was the task you undertook, and, you know, what was the result as well. So always just make sure that when if you're interviewed, think about actual situations, whether it's to do with your personal situation, whether it's to do with the work you've done before, but always be able to kind of describe what you've done and what the outcome was. And I think, as I mentioned before, we also want to know a bit more about you. So why you're applying to join the NHS. We do have what we call values-based questions. So it could be, you know, what would you do in this situation if, you know, you were helping someone out, and how would you manage that? So don't feel you can't, you know, talk about yourself, because it's really important that you're able to talk about your, you know, your personal attributes, what you've done in school, outside of school, or in previous roles. So that's kind of a bit of a summary of the selection process. But generally, we use the application form or CVs, which are done online through the NHS platform.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Well, it's a good opportunity, Nandi, for me to ask the question that's been submitted. It was submitted quite a while ago, so thanks for your patience in submitting this one. I'm going to ask one to Ruth first of all, because it's about a medical clinical role. So the question is, I'm currently in year 12 and aspire to become a surgeon in the future. I wanted to ask how important work experience is, as I've been unable to find any due to the current situation. So more generally, how important do you think work experience is, and are we sort of at a point with the pandemic now where work experience might be more readily available for young people?
I think work experience is invaluable, because I think it gives you the opportunity to really think about whether this is the right pathway for you. I mean, it could be that you've always aspired to become a doctor, and actually you've walked into a clinical area and you've suddenly thought, I'm not going to be able to, this isn't for me. Or it could be that it completely inspires you, and actually it is sort of like opening that magical door to a wonderful future. We do offer work experience. It is something that is only again in its infancy, and that's really because of the pandemic, and obviously the fact that we haven't been allowed visitors for such a long time. So for this young person that's interested in doing some work experience, by all means get in contact with us here at the organisation, because we've got quite a few young people that are coming in over the next 3 months that we are starting a work experience package again. Mainly they want to become doctors, so we've put together a bit of a clinical program to look at different clinical areas of the trust. But obviously that isn't the only work experience we would offer. You know, if we had somebody that wanted to come and have work experience in the facilities and management team, of course, then obviously that would be something I would pass to Nikki and to Katerina to see what they could offer us. So you know, please don't think that it's just for nurses and doctors, because it isn't at all. But it is something that we certainly are doing again, and it's something that is in my remit. So please do get in contact with us, because I'm sure that's something that we could factor in. And also, you're only year 12, so the same year as my son at school. So actually, you could have the opportunity to do this work experience in year 13 as well. So before you've made those university decisions, before you've really decided on that career pathway, you know, have the time. You've got the time still to do work experience, even if we don't get it done in this academic year. For
sure. And so if you say that you've watched this webinar, we can try and fast track you to the front of that work experience line as well.
I was going to add, Gary, as well. I think it's really important that, you know, we do know that sometimes young people don't get work experience placements, and sometimes, you know, the numbers requested are more than what can be offered. So we do also offer a volunteering service as well. So I think that's a good way of getting some experience where you actually volunteer in the organisation. Yeah. And it might be that maybe a year 13 is the best time to do it. But if you don't get a work experience placement, please, you know, on our website we do advertise on the volunteering service, and it might just be coming to the hospital to help out on a charity event, or, you know, working with, you know, people who might need additional support while they're in the hospital, just going around the beds and providing support. So please look out for that as well if you ever get stuck in a work placement.
That's a really good suggestion. So, I mean, Rich, just thinking about something you said there about work experience. If you want to be a surgeon, you might not be able to get that work experience actually in a theatre there. But I imagine, you know, going and doing some work experience with Nikki and Katerina's team is going to be really useful and give you some really good insights into working in the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well. And the work experience program that we're putting on isn't just looking at the clinical areas. It's giving you an overview of the whole organisation. So you might spend a morning in pharmacy, you might spend a morning in the labs, you might spend a morning with the porters just to see what their role is, because they really are the eyes and ears of the hospital. I mean, they go everywhere, and what they don't know isn't worth knowing. I think the only thing that I need to say about the work experience is obviously we are quite limited on being able to accept you at work experience on your age. So if you are under 16, we wouldn't be able to offer work experience. I think because of the environment we're in, it really needs to be those A-level students that come in to do the work experience. I'm not saying that we would disregard everybody under the age of 16. So if you're maybe 15 and IT was where you wanted to work, or finance, so you're not patient facing, you're not going to be in actually even based in this hospital, you would be in the offices that are just around the corner from us, then it would be potentially something we would look at. But if you're looking at that doctor, physio, pharmacy, or working in facilities in the States, then obviously we just need to be a bit mindful about our age because of the potential exposure that or the potential risks that you might be exposed to. So we just need to be cautious.
That makes sense. And so the person who's asked that question just followed up with a couple of questions saying that they're 17. So how do they get there? How do they attain that placement? I mean, just tell us, which school do you go to, or where do you live, and we'll find out which trust it would be more appropriate to go through to. So if you just type that in there, I can make sure we signpost it. But we can share your contact details with Ruth or with Namdi subsequently if that's the area that you live in. So we can make that happen. Bushy Meads and live in St Albans. Okay, so that might be one for colleagues over in West Herts potentially, but we can pick that one up subsequently.
I mean, I think as long as you've got the ability to get yourself to this hospital for that week's work experience, then we wouldn't really we wouldn't say no, but it may be that
Yeah.
it would be more appropriate for a hospital nearer to you, just for the logistics of actually getting here. Because if you're in St Albans, public transport here is not the best. So it may be that, yeah, you need to go to sort of to West Herts Hospital. But obviously, by all means, contact us, because obviously we have the contacts in those hospitals that we can put you in touch with. So
Yeah.
don't think, oh, that's it, they can't do it, because we could just put your details through to our counterparts.
Sure. Okay. I think I've got 2 more questions left. As I've asked these questions and these questions answered, I'm just going to leave this screen up for you as well. So these are the different trusts. So all the panelists today are from the East and North Herts Trust, which is the one in the top left corner. If you click on that QR code, it will take you through to their website, and you can possibly find information there about volunteering and how to get in contact likewise with West Herts as well. So the question is, I'm going to ask Katerina this one, and it's, I don't know, it comes across a little bit more, but I think I know what they mean here. They're saying that hospitals are usually full of people who are ill or upset. So what's it like to actually work in a hospital? So Katerina, what's it like? Because I'm sure you do get that. I mean, hospitals can be a happy place as well, of course.
There has been time when, you know, my background in this hospital is also about working in switchboard and reception, and there has been time when I've come across some patient or visitor that were a bit distressed and upset, but I was successful at the time in you know, solving their problem and their upset, and making them solving the problems and helping them. That's what really made my day. That's why I'm here, because it's the making the difference that makes this our job so worth being here, if it makes sense, because, you know, regardless of working in a clinical or non-clinical area, we all play a part, because often we're all in the corridor, and there are our hospital is huge, and there are visitors that are lost within the areas, and again, helping out someone that is looking lost and trying to take them to the place where they want to be. And, you know, the gratitude, we haven't done anything special, but it's just that helping that is really for me is really, really important. So that's what makes me enjoy it.
Sure. Okay. Namdi, let me ask you that question, because I know through your working experience, you've worked in perhaps lots of different hospitals. So what is it about one that generates a really positive, perhaps, working environment and vibe that maybe some other hospitals wouldn't have?
Yeah, so it might sound like a cliche, but I think it's important to know is the people who work for any NHS organisation and what kind of drive it, and they're kind of the most important part of the whole cog, and you know, in terms of how things are experienced, whether it's by patient, whether it's by visitors, whether it's by our kind of stakeholders, people who have an interest in the hospital. So you know, one of the things we really, I think I touched on this previously, is about, you know, the culture of the organisation, and the culture has to be one that is supportive to staff, so staff feel that actually is a place where I can sort of come in, nurture myself, grow, and enjoy my career. Because, yeah, you know, sometimes it can be quite a difficult place to be, because, you know, we do, if you're on the front line, you do witness things happening. You see families who are quite upset about certain things. You also see people who are quite happy or elated when they've got a good diagnosis. So it's really being very, you know, understanding that, you know, the job you're doing is one that it has to really focus on empathy and understanding people, and not feeling that you can't go the extra mile. So regularly, you know, our staff, you know, stay. Sometimes, you know, people stay late from work because they want to help out a particular patient, or, you know, make sure that someone gets to the right place. I think that's what, you know, makes organizations stand apart from each other. So, you know, I started my career probably about 20 years ago in the NHS, initially doing sort of high volume recruitment, recruiting to you know, kind of nurses and doctors, and, you know, sort of got into education, development, and support, because I really feel passionate about trying to help people to kind of, you know, develop, and also develop the right culture within the organisation that helps support what we're looking at. So, you know, happy people, healthy staff supports happy patients and happy patient care. So I think something that we thrive to provide at all times. So yeah, I would say, you know, in a kind of summary nutshell, good hospitals are those who are able to kind of, you know, maintain, retain people and support people to really grow and flourish within the organisation.
Sure. Okay, that's a really good answer. I think that's possibly quite a good point to end on there, Namdi, because we are approaching 5:30, and I know how precious all of your times are. The only other thing I just wanted everyone to be aware of before we go is this website here, so Careers at the NHS. There's a fantastic website called Step Into the NHS that is really accessible. I think it's particularly aimed, isn't it, at young people as well, to inform you about the 350 plus roles that exist at the moment, many of which we've discussed today. Is that a website that any of you use or promote?
It's a question for the panel, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Yes. So I guess, the Step Into the NHS is a key one. We also, advertise our apprenticeship positions on NHS, jobs. But I think there's also healthcare careers, which is quite a good one as well. If I don't know if you have that to share as well. It's a really good website that kind of describes all the careers in the NHS, and there's short videos you can look at as well that kind of describe what it is to work in a role. And also you hear real people talking about the real experience of working. What's the daily life of a nurse, a daily life of a paramedic in the NHS. So those are quite good as well. Yeah, no, absolutely. All those sorts of resources are really invaluable as well. The QR code in the top left-hand corner, that will take you through to our YouTube channel on HOP, and you'll be able to scan through there and you can have a look at all the previous webinars that we've done, of which, so I'm sure at least half a dozen of them focus on very, very specific medical careers that you could go into. So look, let me conclude by firstly thanking those of you in the live audience at the moment who have contributed with some really, really thoughtful questions today. We hope that this has been really useful for you, and I mean, I found it really, really inspirational. So you've heard from people talking about some of the medical and clinical roles and some of those more traditional roles that you'd expect. But I think Nikki and Katerina have really brought to life some of those fantastic opportunities that exist within the NHS and exist within Hertfordshire in particular for people without clinical and medical backgrounds as well. So look, finally and foremost, thank you to our panelists, so to Namdi, to Ruth, to Nikki and to Katerina for giving up your time this afternoon, and not just this afternoon, and in preparation for today as well. So really appreciate that. I'm sure everyone watching this will join me in thanking you and saying just how informative and inspirational you've been in sharing that message for us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So hopefully, Namdi, you're now going to be inundated with people submitting applications for all the many vacancies that you've got at the moment that you're trying to fill now and in the future. So thank you to everybody for appearing today, and have a really good evening and best of luck in your future careers.
Thank you.